First at 4, we're tracking Irma's dangerous tour through the Sunshine State. Now a tropical storm, but still very dangerous. Take a look at this flooding in Jacksonville, more than 400 miles from where Irma first came ashore. The flooding breaks a record set in 1964 by at least a foot. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Karen Drew. Irma's scope is unlike anything we have seen before. Governor Rick Scott says the Keys are devastated while the West Coast is not as bad. Right now, Key Largo is only accessible by air. The military will fly in C-130 cargo planes with supplies today. From south to north and east to west, Irma has left her mark all over the Florida peninsula. This drone video shows some of the destruction in Naples, which sits on the Gulf Coast. Millions of homes and businesses are without power in Florida alone. More than 220,000 people in shelters right now. Irma is pushing into Georgia at this hour, where one storm-related death has been reported so far. The storm is expected to hit at least 4 more states in the next 2 days. For now, much of the focus is on Florida, so let's go live to Naples for the very latest on the Gulf Coast, where we join Kristen Holmes. Kristen.
Good afternoon. We're here in Naples, an area that got hit by Hurricane Irma and got hit hard, 120-mile-per-hour winds. And we're going to show you what those kind of winds will do. If you look over my shoulder here, you can see this street is just lined with debris. There are trees that have come down. There were actually 3 in the road today when we got here, making it impassable. However, there were bulldozers to try to clean up this area and make it passable for people who are trying to come and survey the damage that's been done. Now, we drove all around Naples today, and this is what we mostly saw. A lot of wind damage, trees that have been in people's yard, trash, things that have been knocked over. Most street signs were completely taken out by this wind. But despite this, people were in relatively high spirits. They told us that they thought the damage was going to be much worse. As Florida assesses the extensive damage from Irma, residents are still facing a 2-front threat. First, the storm surge, remaining a major issue for parts of the state. Jacksonville facing severe flooding as the city was pounded with unforgiving rain and wind. Officials warning residents that even as the storm clears, dangerous conditions remain.
We had mandatory evacuations in A, B, low-lying areas, mobile homes, manufactured homes. Recent data shows even more significant surge, which results in more flooding.
And millions of residents throughout the state are still without power, including a large portion of Miami.
We have power lines down. We've got debris all over the state. We're going to rescue everybody. We're going to try to get everybody back to normal as fast as possible, but everybody's got to be patient.
Further south in the Keys, officials say the priority now is supporting the residents who did not evacuate. And as the storm slowly moves out of Florida, Georgia, Alabama, and the Carolinas are already feeling Irma's impact.
The battery was breached, and many of our low-lying areas are experiencing flooding right now.
Tropical storm warnings and the potential for flash flooding over the next 24 hours have residents and officials on edge as Irma continues to wreak havoc throughout the southeast. And we just heard from the FEMA director, Brock Long, who said that he was unclear when those rescues would actually start in the Florida Keys. The roads are still impassable. Reporting live from Naples, I'm Kristen Holmes. Now back to you.
All right, thank you, Kristen. While Irma has been downgraded, the storm system is still dangerous as it moves towards other states. Let's check in with Ben Bailey for the very latest.
Yeah, Karen, we categorize storms just by wind speed alone. So even though this doesn't have the hurricane title and we don't have a category assigned to it, this thing is still a problem, mainly because of storm surge, also a tornado threat, which is still with it. And there's still tons of rain with what's left of Irma. So this is definitely still a menace to the south. 60-mile-an-hour sustained winds right now. That's the latest from the Hurricane Center. And the track is going to continue to take it to the north and west. Tomorrow morning, still winds of about 35 miles an hour, but it will be losing its strength pretty quickly as we move into Tuesday evening. 30-mile-per-hour winds hanging out in the west part of Tennessee, and then eventually losing its tropical characteristics altogether, but still has some moisture with it that'll bring us some rain. We'll talk more about that in a minute, but you can see how much rain is just spreading over the south, where flooding problems still a concern, even though Irma no longer a hurricane. We'll talk more about this storm and its impacts on us in a few minutes, Karen.
Well, throughout this disaster, we've been hearing stories from Detroiters and former Detroiters who were caught in Irma's path. Today, we're hearing a pastor who is getting a firsthand look at the devastation in the Caribbean, and he is doing what he can to help. He spoke to our Paula Tutman, who's been working the phones in our satellite center today. Hi, Paula.
Hi, Karen. Yeah, you may know this pastor's work. He's from Pontiac. He did Transform Pontiac Now and Shepherd's Fold Church in Pontiac as well. We actually spoke to him just before Irma hit. He was frantic, trying to get his family off the island of St. Croix. But today when I spoke to him, he was actually glad they were trapped there.
Awaiting Hurricane Irma.
For Pastor John Smith, God has steeled him for a journey to pure hell. The Detroit area preacher was called to open a church in St. Croix. Airline ticket prices kept him and his family from evacuating. He now says it was all part of God's plan. While his home was spared by Irma, he got an urgent call from a neighboring island, St. Thomas. No flights in, no flights out. Today, a 2-hour ferry ride into the Devil's Den.
From where we sit, we see homes on the hill that are no longer homes. As we were pulling in, we saw boats that were capsized. We've seen boats that are on the land. We saw multi-million-dollar mansions that people use as vacation property just destroyed.
The island is decimated.
For the most part, our sister islands, St. Thomas and St. John, they have suffered catastrophic issues.
St. Thomas is a U.S. territory. Like Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C., it does not have statehood status, yet residents pay federal taxes with no senator or congresspeople to fight for relief. Pastor Smith worries about what will befall St. Thomas with this kind of devastation.
So my plea is to everyone, even in Michigan and all over the nation, do not forget about the U.S. Virgin Islands. We are a part of the United States, and the difficulty is this. We can't get in cars and travel to another state or go to the West Coast. Everything that we have has to be brought in. So we need support from our stateside family. The blessing is that I do see FEMA representation. I was on the ferry with 36 people who flew in from Atlanta with Red Cross. You see Navy ships out in the sea. And so at these early stages from what we're seeing, I'm believing that people, that the resources are coming.
So I actually contacted Senator Gary Peters' office today. He's the ranking Democrat on the Federal Spending Oversight and Emergency Management Subcommittee. And basically what he said is that a territory does not have to be a state to receive aid or get a disaster declaration. In fact, the president's office amended the disaster declaration for the Virgin Islands this weekend to increase cost sharing and assistance. Listen, it's early. They're just now getting on the ground. They have no idea how much any of this is going to cost, Karen. But as usual, Michiganders, no matter where they are answering the call.
They sure are. Thank you very much, Paula. And speaking of that, tomorrow you have a great opportunity to give hurricane victims in Florida and Texas a helping hand. We are teaming up with the American Red Cross and Art Van for an all-day telethon to raise money for those affected, including the U.S. Virgin Islands. Phone lines will be open from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. No donation is too small. If we work together, we can help people who have lost everything. And help is pouring into the Caribbean from Europe as the French army came to the rescue of the residents on the French islands of Saint Martin and Saint Barthélemy. The death toll on the Caribbean islands is now approaching at least 3 dozen. Without power, some of those smaller islands are totally cut off from the world. Michigan's National Guard is helping Florida to help with the state's recovery. Troops from across the state gathered in Gaylord today, pooling all their equipment together to support Florida's National Guard in the wake of Irma. Once they arrive in southern Florida, they will likely provide humanitarian assistance and security. More soldiers from Michigan are expected to be deployed early next week. In other news today, the suspect charged in this high-speed chase that weaved through southwest and downtown Detroit made his first appearance in court today. We were there. 22-year-old Deron Deshawn Sherrard faces a list of charges, including third-degree fleeing, resisting arrest, and 3 counts of possession of a controlled substance. Police chased Sherrard through Detroit last Friday as he was suspected of shooting a woman in the head Thursday night. Sherrard has not been charged in that shooting. He is due back in court 1 week from today and is on a $75,000 bond. We continue to follow a story that began developing early this morning on Detroit's northwest side, where a woman was found dead in a house on Sorrento near 7 Mile and West Outer Drive. Police say the victim, in her 40s, was shot once and then stabbed several times. Police have taken a suspect into custody. Witnesses say the suspect had been stalking the victim and that they heard screaming from the home on Saturday. Today marks the 16th anniversary of a day that devastated America, the attacks on 9/11. Still ahead, tributes to the victims and President Trump's promise to their families. Also ahead, the Pope's bumpy trip to Colombia ends on a high note. We'll show you how South America said goodbye to Pope Francis. And later, one of the stars of the movie Frozen melts hearts in the middle of a hurricane. This video is going viral.
Coming up all new on Local 4 News at 5 and 6.
When Kid Rock was named as the first performer here at LCA, there was some backlash from civic leaders who say he doesn't represent Detroit and they don't like his politics. Well, Kid Rock, not sitting idly, he went on the offensive on Facebook a day before his first performance. I took his words to Detroiters, asking them their thoughts, and we'll have all the reactions coming up at 6 o'clock.
We are back with tributes to the victims of 9/11 from Metro Detroit to Ground Zero. Flags are flying at half-staff today in Sterling Heights. City officials and local residents gathered this morning in City Hall to honor first responders and those who lost their lives 16 years ago. A moment of silence was also held to mark the moment of the first attack into the World Trade Center. Kimberly Gill is in the newsroom now with memorials in New York, Washington, and Pennsylvania. Kim?
Yeah, Karen, most Americans can remember where they exactly were when they heard the news of the attacks. Those memories were relived today at the sites where the terrorists struck at the Pentagon in Pennsylvania and in New York City. And with that, a single toll of a bell marked the moment when the first of two planes struck the World Trade Center at what has come to be known as Ground Zero in the 9/11 attacks. More than 2,700 people lost their lives. A solemn ceremony was repeated as relatives joined to read aloud the names of all the victims. President Trump traveled to the Pentagon where more than 180 were killed. He offered words of praise for the heroic victims of that day and words of solace to their families.
Though we can never erase your pain or bring back those you lost, we can honor their sacrifice by pledging our resolve to do whatever we must to keep our people safe.
Vice President Mike Pence took part in memorial services in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. He was a congressman in 2011, and the plane that crashed during a struggle between the terrorists and passengers may have been heading for the Capitol. The vice president said those American heroes may have saved his life. At the Ground Zero ceremonies, a few of the names of victims were read by teenage grandchildren who weren't born on September 11th of 2001. And one of those grandchildren spoke saying, quote, "I wish more than anything that I could have met you. I hope you are watching down on me from heaven." Karen, always an emotional day, even 16 years later. We'll send it back to you.
All right, very difficult. Thank you very much, Kim. First at 4, we're also on top of other stories making headlines around the world on this Monday. The Pope's trip to Colombia may have started off on the wrong foot, but he received a colorful goodbye at the airport Sunday. Over the weekend, Pope Francis banged his head on his Pope-mobile as he was stopped amid his well-wishers. He was quickly bandaged up and didn't miss a step in his visit. 6 lives are claimed, and the search is on for 2 other people after torrential rain causes flooding in Italy. The worst of it was in the Tuscan port of Livorno, where surging floodwaters trapped many families and produced fast-moving streams in the streets. And Ben is back as we continue to keep a close eye on Irma, as it's now causing some major flooding in Jacksonville and now hitting the state of Georgia, and gosh, you just patiently wait. It's better than we expected, but it's still very devastating.
Yeah, when you have a Category 4 hurricane, I mean, you're going to get some damage, which we got. And now a lot of that energy is starting to spread out from the center, so it's not as concentrated right in the middle. In fact, from the satellite image, you can't even really tell where the center of circulation is, but everything is starting to spread out. Still a lot of rain associated with Irma, which is now a tropical storm. But I wanted to show you how much wind is still there. Even though this is obviously not a hurricane anymore, look at the extent of those tropical force winds reaching from Panama City, really west of there, all the way over to the South Carolina, North Carolina border. That's almost 400 miles there with those tropical storm force winds, and still have at least gusts near hurricane force towards the center of Irma, which right now is in southwestern portions of Georgia. We will eventually be seeing Irma, at least the remnants of it, start to influence our weather once we get into Wednesday. But we've got some of the best weather in the country right now. 73 outside, low humidity, decent amount of sunshine with just a few of those high clouds, which are already starting to move in from Irma. The infrared satellite makes it look a little bit more opaque and thick than it actually is, but this stuff is thin and the sunshine finding its way around it. As we get into late tomorrow and Wednesday, those clouds will start to thicken up as Irma just starts to slowly meander to the north. Even though the core of it is going out towards the boot heel, it's going to slingshot back, or at least what's left of it, as we get into Wednesday. So by Wednesday afternoon, we'll start seeing some rain here, and it'll be scattered around through the day on Wednesday. By the time we wake up on Thursday morning, that stuff should be gone. Probably still dealing with some clouds at least to start the day, but gradually starting to increase, some sunshine, and slowly move those temperatures back above average, believe it or not, as we sort of ditch that chill that we had to deal with for the last 7+ days. Here are the lows tonight. Most of us are going to be in the 50s. We'll go to 55 in the city. South zone temperatures generally here in the 50s as well, maybe as cool as 50 out in Onstead, but there will be some 40s in a couple spots too. West zone temperatures 48 in Flint, Fenton and Howell both at 49 by tomorrow morning. And in our north zone, look for some 40s here, especially once you get into Sanilac and St. Clair counties. 48 and 49 will be some of our coolest numbers. High temperatures tomorrow going to 77. And yes, we will see some sunshine. High clouds through the day as Irma parks itself just to our south. And in the 7-day forecast, we'll be dealing with Irma's rain there on Wednesday. But look at the numbers increased for the weekend. 81 on Saturday, 80 on Sunday. So it'll be nice to be back above average and get the sunshine to go along with it. Karen?
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Ben. Given the high cost of weddings these days, thrifty brides are always looking for ways to save money. Now they have a new option with a familiar name. And everybody is talking about this video of Kristen Bell, what the homegrown celebrity was doing in the middle of Hurricane Irma that made a whole lot of people smile. In today's trending stories, if you happen to be a bride on a budget, one discount store is looking to help you save some money online. TJ Maxx is opening a wedding shop on the retailer's website. You can find bridal gowns, dresses for the bridesmaids, shoes, jewelry, and a whole lot more. Now, we did take a look at some of the prices and saw wedding dresses for as low as $79.99 with the highest price around $999. Good deals. Homegrown celebrity Kristen Bell is going viral today after singing songs from the movie Frozen in a hurricane shelter. Take a listen. Bell got stuck at an Orlando hotel while filming a movie, so she made the best of a bad situation and entertained fans of all ages. Bell also helped the parents of Frozen co-star Josh Gad, getting them a room at the hotel so they had a place to stay. If you follow her on social media, you saw all the different pictures she posted with a lot of some of the older folks in wheelchairs and whatnot, and they were just like so excited.
It's a pretty snazzy setup for being in the middle of a hurricane.
That is, well, she was in a hotel, but it kind of turned into a shelter because they couldn't leave, so. A little bit of entertaining there. Still ahead, first at 4, gentle giants that needed a helping hand. We'll show you an animal rescue in the middle of Hurricane Irma. But first, here's a look at what I'm working on for tonight at 11.
Just that quickly, I don the vest.
It's a whole new way to keep your kids protected at school. The idea coming from these local 3 fathers.
If we wanted to save lives, we had to reduce that response time.
What is this system? How does it work? And would you want it in your child's school? The Defenders, tonight at 11.
It's fall.
Finally, first at 4, in the middle of a natural disaster, some gentle giants needed a hand.
Yeah, a pair of manatees got stranded when Hurricane Irma lowered water levels in Sarasota Bay. You probably saw just how low that the water got this weekend as that storm moved through Florida.
So some Good Samaritans rolled them onto a tarp and then moved them into a nearby channel. The video of the rescue has been shared at least 70,000 times.
Let's see, they got out.
I know they did. Thank you so much for joining us for First at 4. We're back in a half hour with Local 4 News at 5. Inside Edition, straight ahead.